Taylor, so you sent me this story, which I looked into, and it was absolutely nuts. I've been seeing a lot of these weird, crazy sex trafficking stories. So authorities in Ohio arrested at least 160 people who are patrons of sex workers as part of a week-long crackdown on human trafficking throughout the state. Taylor has a scoop. Taylor, holler at us.
Yes. So reading this story, which is crazy, and I feel like there's so much going on when it comes to sex trafficking. Obviously, the movie recently that came out about sex trafficking. But in this article, it goes on to say about it goes, law enforcement across Ohio teamed up for an effort. I think 149 of the 160 were men that were arrested for allegedly seeking to have sex with minors. Another 6 were arrested for promoting prostitution. And in the article, it goes on to continue that prostitution is illegal in Ohio, but there's groups like the UCLA that actually say that they want to decriminalize prostitution. Yeah, so decriminalizing sex work when it comes to this. And so I want to open it up to all of you. When it comes to prostitution, do you feel that it should be illegal or legal?
Who do you want to ask first?
Yeah, so I am in the camp of like 55% of me thinks that it probably would be net positive if it was legal, because think about, why is human trafficking a big problem? Because there's obviously a demand for sex for people who can't get laid, you know, and that's like a tragic thing that's
don't talk badly about us. Sorry, did I say that out loud?
No, like, yeah, so it's a gross thing that there's like this situation where people get kidnapped and get like offered out to people who are, you know, gross and trying to get that, whatever. But there's also a ton of people who would, you know, try to make money by offering sex, and I think people should be free to do that if they want to do it. And if that was legal, then there wouldn't be this situation where people are trying to kidnap people and offer them like as sex workers. Because same thing with drugs. If you legalize drugs, then there's not like this criminal network that's selling drugs because it's hard to get on the free market, you know. So make it legal. Then
Come on.
What?
There's still people selling. I mean, I'm not going to name names, but there's people that sell weed illegally, and it's legal here in the state for medicinal purposes, not recreational. But I've been to other places in other states where it's legal for both, and there's still guys standing outside trying to sell you cheaper weed.
Yeah, but are they giant criminal networks though that have massive power because they have control over the market?
No, usually guys growing them in their closet.
Exactly.
Right.
But
Okay,
also
so it's not
but then
cartel.
they start passing out the drugs, passing out the needles, and then they're like, oh, it's good, just more people are doing it, but it's legal.
Well,
so, would you think it should be legal or illegal?
That's a very good question. Well, first of all, what's one of the oldest professions in the history? It's prostitution in France. Like selling your ass.
I'm writing that down.
Write that down. France is very possible. But it's a really good question, Taylor. It's a really good point on him, because it's like I used to say, well, I still believe in it. Strip clubs are essential part of society because, and he nailed it. Some of those guys that can't get that release, because these strippers, say what you want, they talk to these guys, yeah, they're getting money, and it's a business. They're talking to them, they hang out, they go to the strip club. Rob's one of those guys. He puts,
Literally, there was a Russian woman that got me. There was a Russian woman that fleeced me at a Philadelphia strip club. I'm not kidding you, for $500 when I delivered pizzas. I kept falling asleep getting private lap dances, and she kept waking me up. I was very drunk. And she kept waking me up and taking me to the ATM, and I just kept putting the card in and taking out $100 at a time to answer. And then I go back, and she'd play like 30 seconds of slow, and then go back, and she'd wake me back up. And the guys that I worked with from the radio, we had all just gotten fired, so we were all really drunk.
Oh my God.
And the next morning I woke up, and the guy's like, yeah, you spent like $1,000 on that woman. And I went, well, at least I got her through nursing school.
Well, like, see, that's an exception because you had that fun, crazy night. But imagine those guys that if it wasn't for that release, they'd be out on the streets, they'd be out there as a predator looking for this, and that'd be a great. I'd like to see like the statistics of places that have more strip clubs and where the sexual assault on women is. 'Cause I think the more strip clubs, the more they get to go and have that release, lap dance, whatever the hell they're doing. But I think when it comes to prostitution, I know that's a slippery slope, because once you have it, you make it legal. Government's obviously gonna get involved. Can you imagine that, bro? Like legitimately calling out, like I can't come have sex. Like it's gonna make it legal, but at the same point, then there's gonna be problems. There's gonna be people that are gonna try to cheat the system, bring in younger people. Oh, this guy wants to hook up with the young. It's a very, very slippery slope. But I mean, I'm kind of on the fence.
You know who would hate that? I think women would hate that, because imagine if that market was just out there, be like, you know what? Like, yeah, I'm just gonna get myself laid because I can and it's legal.
Oh yeah.
You know, but like right now, like women kind of.
Before we go to, sorry, go ahead.
No, just like right now, like think about the situation where like guys in a marriage or something, like the woman knows you can't just go out and get laid because you have to like go into the game or something.
Yeah. I don't.
Before you make your point, though, 'cause I think you're on the other side. I just want you to see what ACLU says about it.
Yeah.
They said the criminalization of sex work makes sex workers more vulnerable to violence on the job and less likely to report violence. It prevents sex workers from accessing health care and other critical services, feeds an out-of-control mass of incarceration system, and further marginalizes some of society's most vulnerable groups, such as trans women of color and immigrants.
Trans women of color, yeah, that's a lot. Trans woman, so a guy that's not white.
It makes it more, people they're actually more vulnerable because it's illegal, because they won't report
So it'd make them safer if it was legal.
Yeah.
Like
Or
the
just
Uber
get a real
prostitution.
job.
The Uber of
If they
hookers.
had,
Exactly.
like if there was a hooker app where on your phone, you can, and honest, I know that sounds ridiculous, but
It's actually pretty funny.
I mean, they could upload their medical records, the people, like, you could make prostitution policed in that way, where in order for you to be able to connect with this prostitute, you would have to submit an AIDS test that proves that you have a clean bill of health, and you can upload it. It's verified by the app. Then it matches you with another clean prostitute in the area.
Yeah.
I actually think that there are ways that we could use technology to make prostitution safe.
Like Angie's List, but for
exactly.
Yeah, like a plumber. Really.
Look at Angie. Don't use Craigslist.
I'm on the completely other side of it.
Yeah.
I think the more we start legalizing things that, sex was not created to just be a fling or a fart in the wind or whatever it is. Like, it was created to be a union between man and woman. And when we start to tear that down on the creation of what sex was created for, and I'm taking this through a biblical worldview.
Totally fine, go for it.
And we start to just morally separate ourselves from God even more as a country, and I think we just continue to spiral down more. Sex was created to be great. That's how God intended it for, between a married man and woman, to have that experience together, to procreate, and to be fruitful and multiply.
Yeah.
And when we start taking that act and just making it casual, I believe it's going to continue to decline our morality as a country.
To make it transactional, where it's like, okay,
Correct.
sign here, and
I agree with what you're saying.
Yeah.
That sex should be more meaningful than it just be. I also see Taylor's point that you brought up earlier about Cardi B and this hookup culture being popularized, which leads to these instances of this weird, rough sex that's accessible, it's available. People are putting that out there. They're proud of it. Like, the hookup culture has become, like, when I was in high school, the girl that got around, and I still know her name to this day. Very nice gal. Yeah. She's a very nice gal. But she got around, and that was the rumor about her, and it was a bad thing.
Yeah.
It was, did you hear what so-and-so did this week? And then it became a shift sometime after I graduated college, and I missed all the fun, where it became people brag about their hookups. Yeah. So while I agree with you that we live in an age where hey, sex is just it's free. It's almost very like 1960s, where it's like, hey, hippie culture, everybody can have sex and do drugs. Now you literally can buy weed from a dispensary and then go have sex with a legal hooker.
Does that make it right?
No.
Right? Just because it's popular doesn't necessarily make it right and moral.
I would agree with you on that, because I actually think it desensitizes everything that we see. Like, for one, I agree with the biblical sense that sex we shouldn't be as much of a promiscuous culture, because it desensitizes everything. Then we see sex on the gram. Like, remember when you used to watch like the award shows and there were clothes and they actually did music, and then they're fast forward to today, they're like jumping on stage, doing all that.
Cardi B, rap.
And then it goes all full circle, where then you have kids that are sitting down and drag queens are reading them because it's okay.
Yeah.
It's like live and let live. So I think I would agree on that standpoint, that it desensitizes everything, and it makes us really an over sexualized culture, which I can't imagine why that would be a good thing.
I think a lot of that also has to do with the porn culture as well.
Oh, God.
I think there's things
that's
killing marriages. It's killing young. I mean, there's kids that are like 22 years old, and those are kids to me now, because I'm getting old. But that are suffering from impotence because they can't have sex with an actual woman, because what they've been accustomed to is so out there that when you're actually with a woman, it doesn't.
Soon AI will solve that problem, and
that's the problem with technology, is that there's great parts of the internet where if you're having some kind of weird ailment, you can go on and find how they treat it in Indonesia. You know, and then you can watch a girl and 17 dudes, and you're like, oh, that's interesting. I'll click on that, and all of a sudden you go down a dark rabbit hole. So that's where like because when I was growing up, how old are you?
40.
Okay, so I'm 37. We didn't have the internet where you could go to boobs.com when I was 12 or 13. If you wanted to see porn, you had to go and find your buddy's dad's stash of nudie mags. And even those at the time, you're like, oh, those are graphic. And now you look at the internet, you're like, oh, that's every day on Twitter. I scroll through and I see like, there's times where I'm on Twitter and I'm just looking for sports. I'm like, what? No, I don't want to see you put that there. Next to news.
Well, and it's really, you know, as a father of 5, it worries me for my children, because the average age of exposure to pornography now is 8 years old.
Oh my God!
You can literally go on Twitter. I mean, it's crazy.
So it's the damage that has on our kids, and the damage that it's going to do for their future is just it's mind-boggling, and it's unforeseen, right? We don't know the long-term effects of early exposure to that kind of stuff, and so it really worries me, you know, for my children and what they're going to have to. The battles they're going to have to fight.
That's why I'm still saving my virginity till I get married.
That's a good boy.
Thanks, buddy.
You already told us about the